or good morning. Thank you for joining us for our second in a series of webinars on AI. For those of you who missed last week, we had the first webinar in the series on AI, and we called that one Setting the Table, where we had some journalists from Bloomberg speak about the legal and or the legislative and the regulatory uh, scene in terms of in which the AI companies are operating and trying to influence. Today, we are going to have um, a more practical application. We've got two excellent presenters from Lexis and Westlaw to talk to us about how to use their products to help monitor this really fast-moving uh, area of law and business. Before I go much further, I want to acknowledge that this webinar is being sponsored by the Chicago Association of Law Libraries, specifically the Government Relations Committee. I want to acknowledge my other committee members. Diana Kopang is the co-chair of that committee. We are ably joined by Ross Prolich and Sally Holterhoff. Kristen Knack is our board liaison to the call board. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eugene Giudice. I'm the Senior Research Services Training Specialist at Dentons in the Chicago office. I work in this building, right about that floor. Again, I want to thank you for all. By a flip of the coin, before we talk about the flip of the coin, I want to introduce our two speakers today. Bridget McMillan is from LexisNexis. She is a knowledge research consultant. And we have Charles Donafer, who is a senior specialist legal editor from Thomson Reuters. He works a lot with the practical law products. So with that, I had a coin toss of who was going to present first, and Bridget won the coin toss. So I'm going to turn it over to Bridget for her presentation. There will be time, hopefully, at the end of both presentations for comments and questions. Bridget, take it away. I'm going to mute myself right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. Hello, everyone. And I know many of you, I see a lot of familiar names in the attendees. So it's lovely to be here today. I really appreciate that Eugene invited me to participate and share with you ways to stay on top of this very challenging and fast-moving topic and broad topic, also using some of the resources you have available to you on Lexis. So I'm going to get started, and I am going to begin with our practical guidance tool. So Eugene, let me know if you're not seeing the screen, but I see up my screen. So, okay. So I'm going to begin with practical guidance. And again, just to orient everyone, here we are at the Lexis Plus tool. Practical guidance lives on the experience doc, and I have engaged with that already. So we're at the practical guidance homepage. And this timing for this webinar couldn't have been better. We just added an AI and technology practice area to practical guidance. So when you come to practical guidance and you open the practice areas, if you tend to have them closed, it's alphabetically is the first one too. So again, timing, however you want to describe it, it's perfect. So what the practical guidance team did was take all of the AI materials that had been spread out across the various practice groups like insurance and labor and employment and energy and utilities. And now it's housed all together. So you can go to one area instead of having to search or drill down into many areas to get to that AI information or topic that you're interested in. And probably many of you are familiar with this. To begin engaging with practical guidance, click on that practice area. So let's look at what is collected there in that AI and technology practice area. So when you come to it, you'll see you have topics and tasks here, and then you'll notice that we have resource kits over here, and that you can browse by state and federal information, a state and federal slant or lens, a country lens, or an industry lens. But also over here to the right, I want to point out we also, for all the practice areas, there will be a down here new and updated. So featuring those items that again might be of most interest because they're new and updated to you. So notice how there was a artificial intelligence legislation tracker. So why I urge everyone to come here is that idea of looking for something
Bridget, you muted yourself, it seems like.
How about now?
There.
Sorry, I
That
think
was my bad. I was trying to mute everybody, and I ended up muting Bridget as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So no, I would urge you again, come here and then just drop down here to see what's new and updated.
You're not sharing anymore, Bridget. Oh, are you? I think are you still sharing? Yes, you are.
I can see her screen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So again, and then you can page through it. You'll notice there's 5 dots. So again, they're going to show the 5 most recent items that have been new or updated in this practice area. And then scrolling up to that, I want to point out our resource kits also. So resource kits are, again, that compilation of the practice notes, checklists, trackers, anything that's applicable to that topic within the AI and technology overarching topic. So definitely, if you like that starting point, look over to these resource kits. You can view them all by clicking on View All and explore them. There's 32, so I think that's well within my ability to scroll through and see if any of them are of interest or are the topic I need. So again, in exploring this AI and technology practice area, we were right, again, that idea of regulation. So if I come into that, we see a lot of information. We see 90 practice notes, 12 checklists, 56 articles, templates. So again, as you've engaged with practical guidance in the past, same thing. You come in, you can scroll through it. You can use the filters here to limit. So if I'm really interested in AI and technology cross-sector regulation, I can limit to that or other topics here, right? Or if I want to limit to a specific jurisdiction or an industry, I can take that slant too. So again, feel free to explore this. And then when you find something you're interested in, so if this very first one, ad blocking legal issues, is of interest, when you come to an item, you can engage with it, right? Notice that there's related content over here. What I want to point out is a couple of ways to, if this is of interest and you want to make it easy to come back to this. Up here is a bookmark feature. So if I bookmark this is going to be on the landing page of practical guidance for me from now on in the future. So I don't even have to go down the pathway to finding it. Or if I want to be alerted to any changes to this as it gets updated, there is that alert feature. So if I create an alert, you'll walk through the alert steps as you're no doubt used to from other alerts. Actually here, it automatically creates it and tells me it's created it. So again, it's going to let me know when I'll get an alert whenever this gets reviewed and edited or added to. And the other tip when using practical guidance, issue material or documents, looking at them in full, you'll see this maintained. So that is your visual cue that it is upbeat. It is something that is active and will be reviewed. If it is no longer being reviewed, no longer active, you'll see the word archived here. And as librarians, we always like to know, well, okay, it's maintained, it's up, it's current, but when was the last time it was reviewed? When you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll find the date that it was last reviewed by an editor and acted on. So in this case, it was just last week, April 23rd. So again, pretty much items you're probably used to, but just wanted to reinforce all of those ways of dealing with the information on a document that you're engaging with in practical guidance. The other thing you can do, so again, this is that idea of you're coming in. I'm going to go back to the practical guidance landing page and go down that pathway. Again, I say explore, but I don't know how much time anyone has in their day to really explore something in depth and really understand it. Oftentimes, again, we're on a crunch. Know that you can put in a search term. So again, if what you're interested in is how AI is affecting, for example, the insurance industry, or again, that word, how is it being captured in regulation or not? You can enter a search term here and be taken to that answer. So know that you can always, again, do a search and then look at your results with that search. So feel free to take advantage of that. If the timing is important, practice search and begin engaging with the results that way too. So again, things you already know, just reinforcing that there's a lot of good information available here. Might not be as excited about going back to the landing page as I am. So, and then what I want to point out is the other approach that I find really helpful. So again, if I'm in practical guidance and I can go to the AI and technology practice area and begin exploring it, or if you're more of a content type approach, which I tend to like, I like to come to tools and resources. And when you come to tools and resources, notice there's a generative AI pre-created pack. So if you go to that, it's the generative AI resource kit. So again, if this is an approach that you like, oh, this is a little bit more, put it this way, as opposed to searching or drilling down, and maybe, again, your timing. If you come here, it's an overview laid out like this. So again, if this is helpful, go to that tools and resources view all, and it's the second item listed. And then coming down here, I wanted to point out a couple other things too. If you go to practice videos, we have, let me see, I think it's 16. Where did I put that number? We have a number of practice area videos, 19 on generative AI or artificial intelligence topics. So again, if you have people who enjoy or prefer learning from a video, these are short videos, they can come in and explore those, or you can use these, share them with anyone, and they can, again, educate themselves or share them with others who might find them helpful. So again, AI technology, the first thing listed, because alphabetically, yay, it is that item. So again, the practice videos can be very helpful. I come back up to this, resources and all. I already spoke to resource kits. The last three items here are really helpful. Our state law comparison tool. So the state law comparison tool allows you to pick a topic, and you start with the practice area, AI and technology. When you then pick a topic, we offer two topics, artificial intelligence and autonomous vehicles and insurance, right, related to AI and technology. I'm going to pick artificial intelligence. Now what happens below is we see 16 jurisdictions. So these are the ones that have, they're having some kind of regulation or some kind of legislation that is specific to artificial intelligence. These are the ones that are currently in existence. So you can select all, and then you hit continue and notice that you have these topics that can be addressed. So you can say, you can checkbox select all, you can be very specific. Does the state regulate the use of AI or automated tools in employment decisions? And then you can download that report. So again, you can craft based on what you're looking for, a very specific state survey, looking at the states that currently have this type of information in regulation or in legislation right now. So again, come into here if you're tasked with that and see if it already exists so that you can take advantage of this instead of building it yourself, right? I'm all about making sure you can use your time wisely and have a good experience and get a good result. So this is called the state law comparison tool. And again, you build it. What I want to point out, go back to that practical guidance page, is there is also a grouping called state law surveys. So these are pre-created, the state law surveys, and they are encompassing all 50 states and or sometimes DC and territories. So if we come down here to, if we stay up here in practice area and I scroll down to AI and technology, there are two that are pre-created for you. So again, if what you need is this, check both the state law comparison tool and the state law survey. These two are two different collections I'll use. So they don't duplicate. So you do need to look at both if what you're, just to see if your topic is covered, as opposed to you having to create it. So just check both buckets is what I urge. And then finally, that last really helpful tool is the trackers that exist. Action is just taking a moment, so let me see. Page is bugging me. I'll go back this way. So if we go into that view all and come down to trackers, and again, this is all part of that AI and technology practice area. But if you, like me, I tend to think content driven at times. For me, it's easier to come in through these specific content sets. And again, if I open up the practice area and scroll down to AI technology, there are 13 trackers. So again, if this come here to look at these, this is tracking legislation here, right? We can see legislation tracker. If you're interested in looking at it from a historical viewpoint, you can see we've archived the 2023, 24, and 25 legislative trackers related to artificial intelligence, and now the 2026 is ongoing. So again, know that you're able to engage with these. If this solves the challenge in front of you and you don't have to create it, please come here, look and see. Or even my thought too is to look at these to see if they're a good starting point and if you have to work with them, right? Maybe you don't need all 50 states, but you can come here and edit it, or also learn good search terms and ways to approach searching this data. So again, all tips and tricks we know as experienced librarians, but I just wanted to make you aware of it. What I like to say is these are items that are already created for you, and feel free to take advantage of them. Because again, they're here on practical guidance. They're for your use and saving you that time. I'm a big believer in that. So other resources that we have available, I'm going to come down to the Legal News Hub and point out, maybe you're already aware of these too, but we have a Law 360 technology section. So you can, you might have everything showing. If you ever want to go to a specific section, you click all sections and then you'll see your Law 360, there's technology. I've clicked on it, so it's already here as a tab. We'll go to that next. And then we also have a Mealy's artificial intelligence section. So wanted you to be aware of that. I've already clicked on it, but again, this is how you can explore. We also have an MLEX artificial intelligence, so I can put that up there. So if you have access to these items, they will be available to you. I clicked on FTC Watch, now it's one of my tabs, and you can explore them. Come here to look for the legal news slant from MLEX on artificial intelligence, right? That global slant, Mealy's artificial intelligence. And then again, engage in any of these articles, clicking on them. This also, if you have it available to you, you can sign up to get this as a newsletter delivered, right? Our Mealy's and Law 360, you can sign up for these, as well as coming to them to see what is currently happening. And then if you're just interested, you can do a really straightforward search and click on AI and see how any articles that are currently in the Law 360, in the Legal News hub here that have AI at part of them, right? So it might not be that you have to go specifically to this. You can just do a simple search to bring that to you. So again, Legal News Hub, come here. We've got some specific sources dedicated to tracking news with a legal slant around artificial intelligence. That being said, you also might want to do a traditional news search. So I set one up because again, maybe you are tracking how the traditional news coverage is at looking at specific topics. So again, I did one around generative AI and regulation. But I would also, listening to last week's presentation, maybe I'm specifically interested in data centers and any regulation around those. So again, we're all strong searchers, but you can craft a search and then make that an alert when you're interested in the news around the topic, as well as, again, that practical guidance lens, which is really the legal lens around a topic. news is again that broader, how is the world overall reacting to this topic or engaged with this topic. So again, know that you can set up a news search, and my team is here to help if you have challenges around how to get a good search. Please engage with your Lexis account team and my team. If you know us, we're happy to help. Also, if you have NewsDesk, know that NewsDesk, I set up a NewsDesk search similarly, and NewsDesk is a great tool for current awareness, and also brings in the open web. So know that you can set up a search, and again, my team is here to help with that. Now, again, that practical guidance area, those are pre-created. I like that idea. Like, go there, see if something already exists for yourself. If not, then move into setting up and then expanding that broader into news, searching, and looking at, again, how the news coverage is in the legal news, Mealy's, Law 360 around the topic. But let's say you're specifically interested in a topic and it isn't in any of the practical guidance materials. Maybe it's, again, more of a breaking topic around an artificial intelligence related topic. So again, speaking to that data center, I did the idea of data center and is there any regulation happening I live in Ohio, happening. So I just went to Ohio bill tracking reports, put in data center, and sure enough, there are some, and they're very recent, right? This isn't a topic that goes like as opposed to the idea of like taxation, right? So it was easy for me to get to this information, and then I could create an alert on this. So don't forget that we have that very powerful legislative information coming in from StateNet, and you can set up alerts around a very specific topic that is and in a very specific jurisdiction if it isn't covered already in one of the items from practical guidance. And then the nice thing about the StateNet information, if we open it, so if I look at this, prohibits new data center sales tax exemptions from being granted. And if I open that item, remember that our legislative information has this predictive legislative outlook, predictive analysis here, and it's saying it's a low chance to pass to the next stage. And it's based on the idea of who is sponsoring this, the makeup of the congressional bodies, who's the governor, whether or not it is likely to pass to the next stage, really. And it's not saying passed overall, it's really even just to that next stage. And you can also explore it in detail. So know that this might be able to, again, if looking at this topic and determining, is this something that as a firm, like maybe we're in, again, speaking to last week's presentation, talking about, we're lobbying or we're interested in the groups that are a part of this topic from both sides. You can look and see the likelihood of this bill passing, right? Based on predictive analysis in the background. So again, take advantage of that. This is more things that you know how to do, just applying them to that AI topic and all the other topics that are connected to that AI topic. So again, remember that you can do that. And again, we're here to help. And the final thing I would say is I would be remiss in not speaking to our generative AI tool, which is Protege, and saying, don't forget you have this available to you, particularly if you want to use it to gain insights from some of those news articles. Know that you can upload the news articles and ask, for example, again, if I was interested in this data center topic, I could upload it and ask it to create a timeline for me. I could upload these documents, and we have a vault feature where you upload them and you say, and I could ask it to identify the players, right? Who are the people or groups on both sides that are engaged in this topic. So again, remember, you can use our Protege tool to help you generate insights, other ways of evaluating the information if you're not finding them already. And again, we have our Protege Legal and we have our Protege General ability. So again, you can engage with open web information here on Protege General and ask questions around generative AI and its place in the world. If you're interested in using that, using this tool, feel free to do that too. So again, if you're if you're not finding the information already in practical guidance, know that you have many avenues to create it or dig into it through our other tools. And again, my team is here to help. All right, I am going to now give the floor back and I'll stop sharing and Charles can take over.
Excellent. Thank you, Bridget, for that exegesis on using Lexis for this process. I'll now turn it over to Charles. Charles, hopefully you'll take yourself off mute. Take it away, please.
Okay, I believe I'm off mute. If I'm not, somebody say something. Okay,
You're
fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Eugene. And hello, everyone. My name is Charles Donifer, and I'm a senior specialist legal editor at Thomson Reuters Practical Law in the Commercial Transactions Group. I've been here for 8 years, and I write about a variety of general commercial topics, but increasingly about AI policy. By way of background, before I joined Practical Law, I was a GC of Squishable, a toy company. Before that, I practiced at Kay Scholler, which is now part of Arnold & Porter. But of note for this audience, I went to law school at Northwestern, which means I am very familiar with at least one Chicago law library. Today, I'm really excited, though, because I have the opportunity to do something a little different for an audience that I think is made up of the kind of inquisitive people who can appreciate it. The focus of today's webinar is staying up to date on AI legislation and regulation. And rather than doing a demo, I want to take you behind the scenes a little bit. However familiar or unfamiliar you are with our platforms, I think there's a lot to be gained by peeling back the curtain to see the why and the what of our content. Of course, if you want a demo of PL or co-counsel, we'd be happy to set one up. But I'm going to assume you have some basic knowledge of how to navigate Practical Law to get to these resources so we can get into the meat of them. I'm the editor of the Practical Law Tracker, Developments in U.S. AI Law and Regulation 2026. It's our third edition of the tracker, and I've been doing quite a lot of work on it lately, driven by new state laws and state guidance. So I'll give you a sense of what I'm actually looking for as I monitor the landscape for the rest of the year to my audience, primarily commercial lawyers and in-house counsel. And that means that I'm not just tracking introduced bills, I'm evaluating risk. So for example, one might see a brand new field like AI regarded as largely unregulated and see a laissez-faire market unconstrained by regulators who are constantly losing this cat and mouse game with tech companies, and they're always one step behind. But if you're pushing the frontier of Gen AI technology, the less regulation, the better, right? Well, not always. So, for example, many of these state-level chatbot laws that were discussed last week, they contain safe harbors for entities that make disclosures at the beginning or end, or beginning or during chats. Colorado's 2024 AI Act, known as SB 205, which is now held up in court, and I'll talk about that later, has a rebuttable presumption that a company used reasonable care to avoid algorithmic discrimination through compliance and alignment with risk management frameworks. That's a valuable thing. That's a very valuable thing. So it's worth considering whether any AI law doesn't restrict you so much as it sets ground rules that either work for you or don't based on how you plan for them. So I happen to watch the last webinar, which is absolutely fascinating. And if you haven't seen it, it's on YouTube and you should check it out. Since this is more forward-looking, I'm going to pick up where they left off in many cases. So with that lens in mind, I'm going to walk you through what I see are the most important threads to follow for the rest of 2026. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead by starting to share my screen. I'm assuming that if you can't hear it, I will hear it from you, or you can't see it, I will hear from you on that. There we are. So before we get into the meat of it, I'm a generalist, but Practical Law is a pretty deep knowledge base. So I asked around to a couple of my fellow editors to see what they were looking at going forward. My first stop, Michael Burling, Senior Managing Editor of our IP and Technology Practice Group, and he told me what he is interested in most, bar none, is the issue of LLM training and fair use. In other words, when you feed copyrighted works into an LLM for purposes of training them. From a technological standpoint, it's not even clear whether the information captured by the LLM in the training process even counts as a copy or not. Last year in Cadre v. Meta, a federal court also found the use of copyrighted materials was fair use based on the standard 4-factor fair use test. However, the Cadre court did something very interesting and left a door open. It said in dicta that while plaintiffs in this case failed to show dilution, one of the 4 factors of the test, it seems likely, quote, seems likely, proof of dilution will often cause that factor to be in the plaintiff's favor in similar cases. So in the future, we might see some different pleading here and getting different results. On the legislation front, a bill was introduced in 2024, Generative AI Copyright Disclosure Act, and that would have required public disclosure of materials developers use to train AI. That bill didn't get anywhere. There's now new legislation, the Copyright Labeling and Ethical AI Reporting Act. That's been introduced, but there haven't been any hearings. And of course, this is something that you will see again and again. It's that we lack clarity from Congress, and that creates a vacuum that's filled by other centers of power. In this case, it's the courts in decisions like Tremblay and Bart's before that, and Cadre that I just mentioned. That's why Michael says this area is very court-driven. That said, the EU AI Act is now in effect, and it requires covered parties to get specific authorization from copyright owners. So just like with GDPR, just because the US isn't making moves doesn't mean nobody is. Now, this is something he's covering in the Generative AI and Copyright Practice Note. EU AI Act is covered in our global content, and these are fantastic resources from very, very knowledgeable people. Next up, as we go around, Barbara Harris, Senior Executive Editor in our Labor and Employment Group. Her AI in the Workplace practice note is extremely thorough, and I refer back to it constantly when doing my own work. The last webinar had some really great content on what legislators have been thinking about, specifically discrimination in hiring, promotion, and firing. A couple of things she flagged as worth following this year. First, the Illinois AI Employment Discrimination Law, you might know as HB 3773, which was mentioned last week, draft rules were circulated earlier this year and will be on the lookout for official rulemaking. Also, New York's Department of Labor added a mandatory checkbox on its worker adjustment and retraining notification WARN notices asking whether the job losses are related to technological innovation or automation. There's a federal WARN laws you're familiar with, but also state WARN laws as well. And if we are now entering a more mature phase of AI in which it's past experiment and now in a position to take over people's jobs fully, this is going to be absolutely huge. Now, this is going to be a very, very big challenge. There's an attempt to codify this into law in New York. That didn't move forward. But now to the area of the law, most people who are following the topic think will be the deciding issue that could render much of what has been done so far moot, and that is federalism. So, in many ways, the federal government has been a sleeping giant. If and when it decides to assert authority over AI in the same way states have these last couple of years, everything we know about how to comply and thrive in this regulatory environment gets turned upside down. And I am focused like a laser on that at Practical Law. More specifically, I've got 4 big questions that will guide what I monitor and how I interpret events. And here are those questions. First, to what extent can the federal government preclude state action? Second, is there an appetite in the legislative or executive branches for that preemption? Third, will states stop passing new laws? I think we're starting to get an answer on this, which is not yet, not by a long shot. And fourth, do the courts agree? And that's something that we will find out soon enough. So for the first question, to what extent can the federal government preclude state action? There are 2 main doctrines, both of which go back to first year of law school constitutional law. First, preemption. When state and federal law conflict, the Constitution's Supremacy Clause says the federal law is supreme. Furthermore, laws like the Federal Aviation Administration Act specifically state they preempt state law on subjects they cover. Then there's the Dormant Commerce Clause. As we know, the Constitution grants the power to regulate interstate commerce. Courts have long held that there is an inverse to this right, and that's the Dormant Commerce Clause. So in other words, the flip side of the congressional power to regulate interstate commerce is a limit on the power of states to do the same thing. So though for preemption in particular to matter, the federal government has to occupy the space currently taken by these state laws. The Trump administration signaled that they want to do this first in a 2025 executive order that stated unambiguously that the administration is seeking one federal law instead of a 50-state patchwork, and that would happen by preempting new state laws and challenging existing ones in court. Now then, in March, the White House released the National Policy Framework for AI. It has legislative recommendations divided into 7 main parts. But the one I care about most is the 7th, which has to do with establishing a federal policy framework and preempting cumbersome state AI laws. There's not a lot of detail in this, but it does state opposition to the development of state AI law, citing interstate commerce and national security. The goal is a minimally burdensome national standard. And there are exemptions here, so for traditional state powers, but the language is unambiguous. The Trump administration believes this is a federal issue, and we want one single standard. So that is the theory. Here is the practice. Last year, following the executive order, Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee released a discussion draft of the Republic Unifying Meritocratic Performance Advancing Machine Intelligence by Eliminating Regulatory Interstate Chaos Across American Industry, Trump America AI Act. Now, that's a backronym for the ages. But this is important because Blackburn is the chair of the Judiciary Committee's Privacy, Technology, and the Law Subcommittee, also the chair of the Consumer Protection, Technology, and Data Privacy Subcommittee within the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. So in short, she's very well positioned to move legislation in the current Congress. And in some ways, a bit of a proxy for what Trump wants from Congress. I mean, his name is on the bill. So when Senator Blackburn released a new discussion draft of the Trump America AI Act last month, the press release specifically cited the executive order on preemption. This draft is almost 300 pages long and it covers many topics. There's an attempt to get some clarity around the fair use issue. There are third-party audits for political bias, which Blackburn's press release put under the heading of protecting conservatives. There's authorization for a new AI standards center at NIST. It's a lot, but I want to zoom in on the preemption portions of this law. There are only a few areas in which the law specifically preempts state law. And when they're listed out here, they don't seem all that ambitious, do they? In a few cases, they specifically protect stricter state laws. Now, you can be forgiven if you read the executive order from the Trump administration and the national policy framework and you thought this bill touted as turning them into statute would be more aggressive than this, yes, you'd be forgiven if you thought that. That said, the Trump America AI Act is not the final word, and it's not even the final bill. It may very well look different when it's officially introduced. There could be additional legislation. I'm not in the prediction business, but I am in the being prepared business. And when preparing to read anything coming from Washington, I'm going to zoom in on the preemption issues because everything I do to understand these new state laws may hinge on if Congress simply decides to not let them exist. Now, my next question is whether states will continue passing bills governing AI in the light of the firmly stated position of the administration that it wants to render it all moot. As I hinted, the answer is no. We have several new AI laws in many states this year. I don't want to retread on too much ground already covered last week, but several states have new regulations on chatbots, specifically companion chatbots. That includes states like Idaho and Nebraska, where Republicans have control of the executive and the legislature, so it's not a partisan issue. Also, with surprisingly little fanfare, just recently, New York scrapped an AI regulation law it passed last year called the RAISE Act in favor of a brand new model closer to that of California, which focuses on so-called frontier AI systems and catastrophic risk. Also, Utah codified an exclusive right to consent to the use of one's personal identity that is descendable and licensable and created a cause of action for abuse of one's personal identity. It, of course, is not the first state to have done so. Tennessee did it last year with something called the Elvis Act, which is also a fantastic backronym. And of course, additional states continue to join many others who've passed laws governing governing deepfakes, both of explicit material and for use in elections. What this means to me is that a lot of legislatures are making an implicit bet that preemption either won't happen or will happen with such a light touch that states have a lot of leeway to craft their own laws. In the shoes of an in-house attorney developing a compliance strategy and staying up to date, I remember the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and I remember two numbers, and that guides me. On July 1st of last year, the Senate voted 99-1 in favor of removing a section of the law that would have imposed a 10-year moratorium on state AI regulation under threat of losing federal broadband internet access funding. Now, who sponsored this amendment, removing the section? Taking it out, allowing states to regulate AI? Well, among others, it was the very same Senator Blackburn who introduced the Trump America AI Act. My takeaway here is that you cannot impose a single nationwide standard if you don't preempt, and there appears to be very little appetite for preemption from the Trump administration, even though it holds out as a pillar of its AI strategy. So when I review new federal legislation, I will look for how they thread this needle, or if they'll give it up entirely, setting a federal baseline and letting states be more strict as they choose. By this point, you may have noticed that I did leave a couple of threads untied. I talked about preemption, but said relatively little about the Dormant Commerce Clause. I've also talked about the president, governors, and legislatures, but very little on the courts. That's because a lot of what I wanted to say about Colorado's SB 205 has fallen by the wayside. Now, just to jog your memory, Colorado's SB 205 is a general purpose AI regulation law with a focus on anti-discrimination and civil rights, among other things. It was supposed to go into effect this year, but it will be our first window into the question of, do the courts agree? The fourth thing I was looking at. XAI, the makers of Grok, among other things, sued to stop enforcement of this Colorado law, the effective date of which was rapidly approaching. The Department of Justice intervened, and just this Monday, Colorado agreed not to temporarily not enforce the law, which is convenient since the governor said he wanted to delay and change the law anyway, and rulemaking isn't finished. But the complaint is instructive here. First Amendment viewpoint discrimination, compelled speech, vagueness, jurisdictional overbreadth, equal protection around the anti-discrimination provisions, but a big serving of the Dormant Commerce Clause. But there's a big bet on federal policy here, and it's clear involvement by DOJ, the intervention, is no surprise. But interestingly, DOJ's intervention focused on equal protection with regard to the anti-discrimination provisions and did not even name check the Dormant Commerce Clause. But XAI's complaint copiously quotes the White House AI Action Plan in the executive order. That makes sense because the executive order in turn mentioned SB 205. There's a lot of language lifted right out of these documents. As you can see, one example of that kind of language here, you'll see American AI dominance is a phrase that's used again and again in Trump administration materials as the focal point of what they want to do with national AI policy. And so XAI copying that is not a surprise. Now, allow me to get into the weeds for just a moment, as if we weren't enough in the weeds already. XAI's Dormant Commerce Clause argument is based on the Pike balancing test I mentioned briefly earlier. In the complaint, they use an articulation of it from a later case called Johnson & Johnson Vision Care v. Reyes that has 4 factors. They hinge on some very contentious issues, like how we can tell if algorithmic discrimination is taking place and whether the national security aspects of AI innovation are burdened by comprehensive state laws like SB 205. Then there's the issue of less restrictive alternatives. States have civil rights, consumer protection, and anti-fraud laws already. Why not use those? Now, if you feel like this is a bit of a cliffhanger, you're not wrong. If you're monitoring state and federal laws, this is a point of tremendous uncertainty. This XAI v. Weiser case might be a turning point. So, what should we look for going forward? Very first thing is an audit of your own AI uses and goals. What do you use that is high risk and already in a critical role? Are you in a high risk area or your clients in a high risk area like children's products or healthcare? From there, you can evaluate defined terms and the scope of AI laws to determine what's actually most important for you. Next, we have a much better picture of where the executive stands than we did even 2 months ago. Between the national policy framework and the executive order, the administration has been clear as a bell that it is not a fan of broadly applicable state AI legislation. That said, there haven't really been major moves. I could speculate on the reasons. Perhaps the administration priorities are elsewhere. Perhaps there's reliance on the courts to do the work of striking down state laws. Perhaps this is being saved for an omnibus bill like OBBB. But that's just that, speculation. The only thing we know for sure is that the Trump administration did not expend much political capital on this, didn't do so during Big Beautiful Bill, and might be, in the end, the dog that didn't bark in all of this. Now, I'd also like to call out something that hasn't been mentioned enough. This isn't strictly a partisan issue. Even if the White House says it doesn't want a patchwork of state laws, Republican-controlled states like Idaho, Utah, even Texas, they're making moves. So I would not ignore jurisdictions based on party control alone. And next, when I go to a piece of legislation, I go straight to the definitions. That's pretty common, but even more important in AI because there are so few established common definitions and standards. So, for example, aside from some very obvious cases, is a mass layoff the result of AI or a restructuring that also happens to include having the remaining workers use AI more? What does something as basic as reasonable care even mean when you're dealing with black box systems with agentic capability? But last, I want to leave you with a thought about mindset. The instinct in any fast-moving regulatory environment is to put things in big buckets, pro-AI or anti-AI, regulation, or innovation, state or federal control. I'd encourage you to resist that. A good mindset for AI law is recognizing that the strategy you build today may need to be rebuilt when a court rules, when Congress acts, or when new capability changes what that risk actually is. It means treating every new development not as a confirmation of what you already knew, but as truly new information. So I'd ask you to hold your conclusions loosely, to stay curious, and to keep up to date. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and turn things over to Eugene.
I like the way you wrap things up, Charles, with stay curious. I think that's a good watchword for all of us in this profession. We've got about 12 minutes left, and I want to provide time for people who might have questions to voice them. So if you have a question, please feel free to come off mute or put it in the chat. We'll take as many questions as time permits.
This is Sandra. I'll just say I really enjoyed that presentation, and Charles did a great job channeling his inner Erwin Chemerinsky.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Anybody else? Charles and Bridget, no doubt there will be questions after people review the recording of this webinar, or have people have time to sit with the question and sit with the thought and let those things percolate. So you may be hearing from people after this webinar.
Okay. Now's the time because I'm really riding high on that channel my inner Edwin Chemerinsky bit. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, that being said or not said, I'll take silence as assent, and we'll wrap up early. I'll give you back 10 minutes of your day. Again, on behalf of the Chicago Association of Law Libraries Government Relations Committee, again, myself as co-chair, Diana Kopang is also as co-chair, Sally Holterhoff, Russ Prolich, and our liaison, Kristen Nike. I want to thank all of you for attending today's webinar. Please look for another message with the link to the recording. Charles and Bridget, again, thank you again for your time, and have a great day, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.